from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about the black vote. Have black people become so loyal to the Democratic Party that we now only vote Democrat? This is Reverend Charles Harrison, and welcome to the All Indiana Podcast Network, and this is Real Talk, and it is an honor to be with you again today. And I have three very special guests with me today. Two in the studio and one by phone. I have John Hall, former Deputy Mayor of Indianapolis under the Goldsmith administration. I have Bishop Derek Jefferson, who is the president of the Interdenominational Ministerial Lines of Greater Indianapolis. And I have on the phone Olgen Williams, former Deputy Mayor under Greg Ballard. Welcome, guys. How are you doing today?
Fine,
Good, Pastor.
Well, fine, thank you.
Well, let's get into this conversation, because this is a conversation that I have been having with people, and let me say up front that I have ever since I've been of age to vote, going back to age 19, I think was the first time I voted. I have always voted Democrat, and I've always voted Democrat because everybody in my family voted Democrat, and because I thought voting Democrat was what, African Americans did. So all of my life I have been doing that. And when you look at the history of Black America up to a certain point, and I know John is going to give us kind of a history, the question becomes, have we put all of our eggs as Black Americans in one basket? Is it because one party has reached out to us and the other party neglects us? Some people feel like one party uses us and the other party ignores us. But certainly it seems like in every major election, whether it's local, statewide, or national, mostly 90% of black voters vote Democrat. The question is, over the last 40 to 50 years, have we really benefited a lot from our loyalty of our vote to one particular party? Is it healthy for us as blacks to only put all of our eggs in one basket? We have blacks who are conservative, we have blacks who are moderate, like myself, and then we have blacks who tend to be more liberal or progressive. I'm not for sure that when we deal with a lot of the critical issues that Black America faces today, we have a good, broad conversation when it comes to not just the issues, but what are the solutions to the issues. And has it been healthy for us not to have a stronger presence in the Republican Party, the Libertarian Party, as Black Americans? So I want to have that conversation today with these three distinguished guests and myself to really talk about, this whole issue of when it comes to the black vote. For those who tend not to vote Democrat, you certainly tend in today's time, and maybe it's always been that way, you tend to get labeled as your Uncle Tom, you'll sell out to the, black community. Is that really true? And is that fair, and is that really helpful for the overall bigger picture of the cause of Black America? So, John, I want to start with you in this conversation to kind of give us somewhat of a little of a history, if you can, of, because I know there was a time when blacks voted Republican.
That's true. That's true, Pastor. Since 1865, when Lincoln and the Republican Party had the push for amendments 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, which freed slaves and gave black men the right to vote. blacks have always voted in their interests. Now, we were very loyal after 1865. We were loyal. Not to say we were getting a whole lot, but we are a loyal people. And so Republicans made that initiative, and we stuck with them up till about 1932. Franklin Roosevelt came up with work programs, CCC camp. My father was a member of that. The WPA, the work programs, where blacks could begin to get jobs and make a little money. That was the shift. 1936, 70% of blacks voted Democrat because of tangible things that they could get. Now, does that mean they were getting treated any better by both Democrat or Republicans? Not necessarily, but they could feed their families. There was something tangible coming. Social programs began to flow after the 65 and Johnson era, his war on poverty. For many African Americans, that was what we were looking for.
Well, John, that's interesting you said that but in the South during that time, wasn't whites who were part of the Jim Crow movement, were they not Democrats in the South prior to, President Johnson?
The slave owners in the South were Democrats.
Right.
The Dixiecrats, the white segregationists, they were the Democrats in the South. My grandfather started out as a Republican. And so, that's what you did, that Southern movement. And it's interesting, the migration from the South up north by Americans of African descent placed a lot of blacks in suburbs like Chicago, maybe even here in Indianapolis. And in Chicago in the early 20s and 30s, they elected Oscar DePriest, who was one of the first black Republican congressmen since Reconstruction, because they were used to voting Republican in the South. When they migrated north, they kept it up. The political machines in Chicago, the Republicans courted them, and they developed a base of power. Yeah.
So how was that, our best interest for blacks starting in about 1936 to vote with the segregationists in the South for the same party?
Politics is always local. Now, there are a lot of people here in Indiana, a lot of Americans of African descent here in Indiana would say, well, how could you be a Republican in Indianapolis? Well, for 45 years, Republicans controlled Indianapolis. So if you wanted something, a job, a political job, let me say it like that.
Okay.
If you wanted to work for the city, you wanted a political job, that sort of, or a contract, you probably played Republican politics a little bit. It's politics is a game. Has nothing to do with religion. Mm-hmm. I keep telling Pastor, this is Caesar's game. Mm-hmm. So you might have wanted to get your family members in a position. Well, yeah. So for 45 years, Republicans dominated Indianapolis just like Democrats are dominating today. Mm-hmm. And so now, if you're interested in opportunities in the political arena, you're looking at who can help me. Mm-hmm. Where can I get a lift up? And Americans of African descent have always been shrewd, so they're going to choose that way.
Deputy Mayor Olgen, what do you think? Have blacks depended too much, on the Democratic Party, as a people, not just in this city, but nationally? What do you think when it comes to the black vote?
Yeah, I think overall, 85% of black voters have depended on the Democrat Party to do some form of to help them out. And that's because the leadership, they don't inform themselves of the issues, what's beneficial for them, and they just go and vote in Indiana a straight ticket because somebody told them to. They still think they still believe that Democrats mean pro-black, pro-Afro-American, etc., but not necessarily. And they don't look at the individual. I think we have put too many eggs in all the eggs in one basket and haven't got no results. Nothing is hatched. No results, no positive results at the end of the day. If you look at what's going on in the country, the major cities that are ran by Democrats, etc., they're in crisis. They don't want to talk about it. They're not doing those things that are expedient to us. You look at even crime and situations, some of the stuff that we concern ourselves with, some of the laws that have been passed, and some of the stuff that affect us. They were done by Democrats, mayors, legislatures, to put it in a bind. I think you have to be informed. I'm from the South, from Tennessee, and the first in the 50s, Eisenhower, when he was being nominated for the president of the United States, I was in East St. Louis in my grandmother's living room, and she had a TV. They were prosperous. She was one of the people I know had a TV, and she was sitting there watching Eisenhower be nominated. And she was so thrilled that Eisenhower was being nominated as the next president in the Republican Party. I guess I didn't understand any of that, of course. Look, I remember that. I don't know why I remember that. All the things I could remember about TV in 52, 50, whatever I think it was. I remember her and Eisenhower in that front room. That stuck with me, of course. And that didn't mean I became a Republican by any means, but that stuck with me. About, like John said, blacks, and she was from Tennessee as well. And they weren't Democrats when they came up here. They were Republicans because they got a better shot. Believe it or not, even in the South, dealing with Republicans. Democrats was horrible in the South.
Good point.
I think that we have not informed ourselves. I think that we have been used. And like John said, politics is a game. There's nothing spiritual about it. It's secular. And then when people are in charge, they try to control the masses. They want to keep the masses uninformed about the issues. And we don't look at the issues that really impact our community enough when we go vote straight ticket without saying, hey, this is not good for me.
Bishop Jefferson. Bishop
I'm
Jefferson.
horse, so.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay, Deputy Mayor. Bishop Jefferson, I know the work you are doing with the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance of Greater Indianapolis. I think you are really trying to broaden the perspective of Black Indianapolis. And I know a lot of times at your events, you have representatives from all different parties, Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, and you tend to be a little more open to candidates from different parties. Have you gotten pushback because of that? And kind of talk a little bit about your experience and what you think about this whole issue.
Well, thank you, Pastor Harrison. It's an honor to be here. And to Mr. Hall, going way back at Tech High School.
Tech High.
School. And to my mentor, Dr. Williams, who often tell me, Pastor Jefferson, this is not spiritual. And John just mentioned it, but
I can't hear him.
One of the things that Dr. Harrison, that I'm dealing with now. For instance, one of my pastor friends called me that day, and the first thing he said was, "Hello, my Republican pastor."
Wow.
And so now I have been labeled as a Republican just because I have brought both parties to our alliance. It's interesting. I was thinking about the scripture. One scripture talks about my people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge. I think the African American community, and I don't consider myself as a politician, but get involved in what's going on in our community. I see now the broader perspective of what's happening, but I think as a people, we are really uneducated when it comes to politics. And I was doing my little research, and it's amazing because only 6 states actually have what you call straight tickets.
Right.
And Indiana won. And I'm not ashamed to say, ever since I've been voting, I have always been bipartisan.
Right.
And so, and I wasn't really told who to vote for. I just always thought that you vote for the person who's going to do the best job for your community, for yourself. Right. But what's interesting is that even this last election, I felt compelled as an individual, because I have a right, to really support several Republican candidates. And what really bothered me is the fact that going back to the Republicans now, Mr. Hall, is the fact that they don't embrace us until they need us. And that's one of the problems I have with the Republican Party now, is that I read today that, and I don't know if these numbers are right, but it said that 31% African Americans are Democrats, 25% African Americans are Republicans, I didn't know that, and 41% is independent. So that's pretty interesting. I think we as a people really can change in Indianapolis if we just come together. But I must say, my own personal opinion, the Democrats and the Republicans are doing nothing for us.
So the question becomes, in our conversation, since we're having this conversation, we tend only to see Republicans true during election time, except for a few exceptions. You know, I certainly think that Mayor Ballard was very engaged, you know, in the African American community and had regular meetings with leaders, and certainly when he was at neighborhood meetings, a lot of times he would be the last person to leave the room, you know, because he was talking to residents. I'm not for sure there's been a whole lot of other Republican leaders kind of like Mayor Ballard was, former Mayor Ballard, and I think that's been the criticism with the Republican Party, is that they tend to ignore us, particularly in urban cities, until election time when we're needed. But I'm not for sure that Democrats who are in political office do much different, because we normally don't see them in our churches to its election time. So I've been, you know, giving a lot of thought to that. Do Democrats just take for granted we're going to vote for them and they don't have to do much for us?
Let me say this, Pastor Harrison. So I consider myself now as a change maker.
Okay.
After this last election, I called the Republican Party chairperson, and I asked him I wanted to meet with the entire Republican Party to meet some of us, and we're putting it together. So not that we want to listen to them. If they want our vote, they got to hear us and what we want.
Okay.
And so I'm saying that we just got to educate our people. And so I'm not telling nobody how to vote, but I think we need to just be educated on how to vote.
Former Deputy Mayor Olgen Williams, I thought you did a good job of connecting black leaders, black residents to the Ballard administration, and you were a part of those continuing dialogues that took place. Was that really helpful, and is that what the Republican Party needs to do more of if they want greater support from the African American community? Or is it on us as African Americans to reach out more, or is it both?
Well, I think it's both, but we have to think a little bit more open-minded and willing to reach out to Republicans or Libertarians and see what their conversations about when it comes to our communities and our quality of living in this city. I was very fortunate to be able to have a good mayor to work for, and he was open-minded, and we did a lot of reaching out to black leaders in that, and with reaching out to the police community. We set up monthly meetings, every other month meetings with African American leaders with the mayor that people didn't even know about. The mayor would talk to people, African American leaders, in confidence, try to get their take on certain things and feedback on things he was thinking about doing, see what they thought, how it was going to impact our community, and same with the police community. But that was reaching out to them and trying to inform people. But we are so biased in our thinking of the media and stuff when it comes to these things, being fought on every hand, and they beat you down Hold on for a minute.
Well, that is true. You do. Go ahead.
And they beat you down, by calling your name. You're this or you're that. It don't bother me at all. Trust me. When I came out of the revolution, realized it wasn't going to be televised and got changed, I began to think and look at different things a different way. I began to research and look at things. I came out not liking none of them, but I realized that people said, well, you're a Republican. Why be what you want me to be? But, I split my ticket. I ain't got to justify nothing. I ain't got to defend nothing. But I began to educate myself on the issues and my values and my platform. And I taught my children the same way. This platform is closer to what we believe as Christians, as people, as fathers. So if I'm going to vote, I'm going to vote for somebody I think that have the same interests or think more like me than I do. I'm not going to go out in that field. So educating myself, and make sure and talk my children to educate themselves about the issues. As an end, then you go and vote for, like this last election. I'm like many of you all. I split my ticket. And certain people I like, I trust, and I thought would do a good job. I even vote for one libertarian. That's how much. So, but that's because I educated myself. And then some things, just not going to change no matter if you vote or not. But education is the key. And I think we have to, the Republican Party, this is on them. They have to stop having us pray at the dinner and come along when they need a follow-up. They got to bring African Americans before the whole group to talk, to listen to they articulate their views on issues as well, and give them a chance. There's a nice group of young African Americans, Republicans in this city that's trying to get into the mix. There's some older ones like John and myself, been in the mix and trying to educate them to get in the mix. But they got to open that door, and they got to begin to run more black candidates that are good candidates for these positions and support them, so people can see, hey, these people are for you and are going to do for you. And this is what they believe in. This is what you believe in. It's a secular thing, like you said, like John said. It's a game you got to play. But they don't do a good job in this state and in this county, in this state, believe it or not. And let me tell you, Republicans in this state are considered still a stereotype of a picture as being racist because they went after certain men that were Republicans, black, and knocked them down. And black people look at that and say, see, they're the same. But they don't know Democrats do the same thing, though.
Is it a requirement that if you are black, you have to be Democrat and you can only vote Democrat? And I raised this issue. I'm paying attention to what's going on in Georgia between Senator Womack and Herschel Walker and the viciousness, the attacks that are coming out of the African-American community toward Herschel Walker. Doesn't every black American have the right to vote how they want to vote and believe what they want to believe and allow the people to make the choice? But he has now become the enemy, the Uncle Tom, the sellout of the black community because he voices conservative viewpoints. And some of those viewpoints, I think, are more consistent with the black tradition and our past value systems as black America. But it's the attack that really troubles me that, Bishop Jefferson, I've been called a Republican too, and because I supported some Republican mayors and stood with them, and that seems to be what is said about you to try to smear you and discredit you in the community, that you are Republican somehow. The implication is you on the enemy side, you on the wrong side. When we just have different viewpoints on the black family, on crime and violence, on the economy, on housing and the blight in the community. I mean, we all have different viewpoints, right. But if you don't support the Democrat, there are some Democrats that I voted for this election. There's some I didn't vote for because I didn't think they were the best candidates. But it doesn't seem like, John, we are allowed to do that, that you have to be Democrat. If not, you are the enemy.
As I said earlier, politics is a contact sport.
It is.
It is playing basketball at 25th and Martindale. It's neighborhood alley ball. Mm-hmm. So if you are against me, I'm going to foul you. I'm going to go after your kneecap. Politics is a rough game. And I think you see during this Trumpster area how vicious it can be. Mm-hmm. Lying, deceit, whatever happened, all of that stuff. That's the game. The game is not a religious game. It's a Caesar game. And so that, now Herschel has brought a lot of it on himself with some of the answers and some of the positions he's been in. But
I've heard it's worse on our side too with some of our candidates over the years.
Well, yes.
But they get accepted because they are D. Is he the most articulate? No, but we've had Democrats that are not the most articulate, but we vote them in office.
I looked up from 1992 to about 2014. The Americans of African descent vote about 80 to 90% Democrat. This has been a steady line, and Black Republicans have voted anywhere from 12 to 15%. It's this big a gap, okay? European Americans from 1992 to 2014, European Americans vote Republican roughly anywhere from 42 to 50%, and they vote Republican 42 to 50%. They vote Republican 41 to 44%. It's a lot closer.
Between white Democrats, white Republicans.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that leverage, that would make a political party go out and try to sway. Because, that leverage there, that's a smaller gap. Mm-hmm. Where our gap is a guaranteed, Democrats got a guaranteed 80%. I don't have to necessarily offer you anything.
Right.
I'm going to get 80 if I don't say one word.
So then if Bishop Jefferson and Olgen Williams then says, no, we ought not to be voting 80%, then they become the object of the attacks.
Yes, because Democrats want to keep whatever privileges they've been getting, whether it's contracts, whether it's a job, whether it's whatever it might be.
Right.
Those are real tangible things. And so you are seen now as trying to disrupt my cash flow. Yeah. Now I would say Republicans in Indianapolis have been unique across the country. Kansas City was one that was good doing stuff. The Republican Party came out and tried to attract. But, that's the piece. It's a mathematical game. Who wins, and race is always in the picture. So if Republicans go after and get 50% of the black vote, what happens to that white vote that may not like that? They're going to go away. So it's always a balanced kind of thing that goes down.
I was listening the other day that the Hispanic vote has shifted. Mm-hmm. It's more 60-40 Democrat, and the numbers are starting to narrow. Mm-hmm. But we seem to be, as Black Americans, the only race in America right now that is throwing all of our eggs into one basket, Bishop.
And that's my concern. And the question is, how do we change that? So I think, again, political education. And so I'm personally, and this is just me feeling this way, I really think in 2023, my focus is start having town hall meetings, just educating our community about politics or parties.
Okay, so I like that. I like that. So in doing that, how you foresee doing that and bring about the education? You see the church as the vehicle for beginning that education process in the black community?
Again, I don't really want to, because the church has a great voice.
Right, we do. Certainly we do.
And so, and I don't want to make it, I got to decide how I'm going to separate it. But
right.
With Amaji being a bipartisan organization, I think I'm going to use that platform. And my mentor, if he corrects me, then I'll do maybe different. But Olgen keeps me in line. And I may be talking too fast, and he'll call me and say, hey, no. But anyway, I'm sharing my passion.
Right.
Because, I looked at, our community, even with the deaths that I had in my family and all the things going on. Our people is just being destroyed, and politically, spiritually, mentally, physically. And so, my thing is, for instance, and I'm not ashamed to say it, this last election, I had 60 African American poll workers working for the Republican Party.
Wow!
And they said, "Wow!" Now, even though they got paid, some of them, but the day before the election, we had like a little meeting with all the candidates. And they said this is the best, because they opened up the floor, because they want to know what you're running for and what you stood for. And they said that was the best meeting they had for us opening up to the community that they ever had with all the meetings they had. And then one lady said, well, that's because they're getting paid. Again, they look at us certain ways. But again, there were 7 of them that came out of that meeting that actually voted Republican because they had a better understanding. So our community, again, don't know no better. So I'm praying, hoping that the Lord will help us to open up the platform to our community and then bring them to us to hear us, because they don't hear us. They think they have all the answers. I hate to say that, but they think they have all the answers. And I think had they gotten involved with the black community, some of them would have won this last election, but they waited too late. They didn't have most of them didn't have any African American in their ads. I mean, look at Mr. Ryan Mears shaking little African American kids' hands, had black people in his ad. None of them Republicans had many African Americans in their ad. How do you expect us to vote for you and you can't even put us in the ad with you?
Olgen, back when Ballard ran the second time, there were ministers that were willing to do ads for him, that prominent ministers that ran on the black media stations, because they felt that strongly about him. Certainly there was pushback for that, and I remember Amos Brown making the comment that ad sealed the deal for Ballard because of who the ministers were that were part of the ad. You remember that, Deputy Mayor Olgen Williams?
Yeah, Greg Wilson and I, we worked with the ministers often with our faith-based initiative and letting them meet with Mayor Ballard personally. I was the type of person that you had to go through me to get to him. I wanted you to have his number personally so you could call it. But we did stuff, though. We were very fortunate to be able to produce fruit. People started working in the neighborhood. They saw infrastructure, what was going on, and then the mayor made himself available. People, one of my jobs was to make sure he was available. He didn't know this community, and so he had to introduce himself to this community. So he went out and met these men and women, and they put their confidence in him from talking to him and showing some of the stuff he did the first 4 years. And I know we got beat up, and they tried to use a race card, but people met him for themselves and realized this man is not racist. This guy is straight up. He's trying to do something, do the right thing. And the politician got to produce results, and then when you produce results, you got to make sure people understand where those results are coming from, those fruit. That's what made a difference, I think. And they got beat up for it now. Some of them got punished for it. When things change, they still punishing some people, believe it or not,
right.
Trying to. But it's a fight. But Republicans, again, they have to do a better job of reaching out and informing people who they really are, and take this stereotype off of them about being part of racism and anti-black. That's not true. But they act like it, though. They're offish. They don't bring people together. They communicate very well with the community. When they running, the only time they show up, you see they staff. Very few minorities on their staff is in it at all, and that's their fault. They're not diversifying the party in a way it should be diversified for people to realize that they can be a part of their choice because of the platform they present to them. And that's on the Republican Party for sure. I used to tell them, I'm not trying to make black people Republicans. I'm trying to get them to vote for you as an individual, as a good candidate. And Republicans got to do that. They got to present good candidates to people, not Republican candidates, but candidates going to be for the community, and people think they for them. They're going to get things done for them.
That's what I hope will happen out of this. This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and my guests today are Bishop Derek Jefferson, John Hall, and Olgen Williams. My hope is that, Bishop, that we start voting for individuals who are the best candidate and who is in line with our agenda to help improve the quality of life in our communities, and not give people a pass. If we're going to vote 90% one particular way, at the end of the day, did they do an effective job as the elected official in addressing issues that are impacting our community? Mm-hmm. In every major city in this country right now, we're seeing escalating levels of violence that is disproportionately impacting the black community, crime and violence. And there's no accountability. I assure you that if those were Republican mayors, there would have been a much greater outcry at this, surging, record-breaking level of violence. And I would just like for the playing field, John, to be balanced, to be equal, and I know it's not, and I'm learning, as a pastor, that this is Caesar's game and there's nothing spiritual about it. But I'm with Bishop Jefferson. Some of us have to say this is just unacceptable anymore because our community is hurting and is impacted the most because of the way we're doing politics in this country. There may be a naive perspective on this, but I do tend to think that this younger generation of millennials and Gen Z seem to be a little more open and are starting to question our loyalty to the Democratic Party and seem to be a little more open to crossing over. And it seemed like in some of the exit polls, we were starting to see more black men vote Republican more so than black female. I don't know what's driving that, but that's what it's kind of showing. John, have you been hearing that and those numbers that millennials and Gen Z tend to be a little more open to crossing over and being a part of the Republican Party, or at least voting for Republican candidates?
Well, I think what I did hear was that young people definitely voted this last election in huge numbers, but it benefited Biden. Mm-hmm. The piece that I think. Oh yeah,
told him he was going to forget that money.
Yes, yeah,
because black folks always want something.
Yes.
Well, and everybody wants something. I mean, that's the game of politics. It's a round circle pie, and everybody wants their piece. And I think until the black vote can be maneuvered to one party or the other at that 70-80% range, we will stay in the same predicament. By that I mean, if we didn't get X from Democrats, and then Republicans came and said, we're going to give it to you, if you could then shift 70% of that black vote to Republicans to show here's what we'll do when we don't get, then you have leverage and you're playing the game. You kind of understand what I'm saying? But without that leverage, without you being able to deliver that, that leverage, then we're stuck with 80, 12, and we ride along.
So the state doesn't need the African American vote because it's a red state. But Marion County is Democratic. They need our vote. But at some point, they forget Indianapolis. As long as we got the state, we don't care about Indianapolis.
But the demographics, are going to shift and change in this country. And my, point I've tried to make is that the Republican Party has to be more open to embrace black leaderships and be at the table when decisions are being made about the direction of the party and the platform. Go ahead.
Let me jump in real quick. So the Trumpster has shown Republicans how to win without the black vote. So he's got an alt-right racist kind of campaign. He's drawing in that northern European American that is anti-black or migrant or whatever.
That's what Nixon did.
That formula works.
But he did get pretty good size black vote.
He got 12%.
Yes.
Now Bush got 12. But he's in 16 he got 8%. In 20 he got 12%. So but I'm saying that in my opinion, the Trumpster tried to show people how he could win elections without concentrating on that black vote. So can Republicans take that to the bank and now not use your vote, but go after that alt-right crew, all those other groups, to get his 51% to win?
But he lost. But I think DeSantis showed in Florida that if you broaden the tent, he ended up winning the governor's race by 20 points because he had a much broader tent and it encompasses Latinos and blacks and whites. And it was much more successful in doing it that way because you're never going to be able to compete in urban cities with that strategy. But if you have a broader strategy like Mayor Ballard did, where you are able to appeal to moderate Democrats, independents, and Republicans, that's what won the election for him when he probably shouldn't have won it, but he did because he had a big tent.
Goldsmith, Hudnut, they both got good percentages of the black vote. DeSantis, the Cubans and Puerto Ricans, they came out for him. The question will be, Pastor, can that formula, will Republicans across the country try to use that formula? I mean, to me, that's the real question.
Right. That is the question. Listen, this has been a great conversation, and I don't run out of time. We're going to come back and do this and get more into depth about some other issues because I think this is the conversation we have to have. I just want to see the black community disperse our eggs differently, and I think if we do, I think we will see a greater benefit that will uplift even more blacks in this country who are still at the bottom.
Let me say this, Reverend Harrison. What basically the black community become independently thinkers.
Yeah, that's right.
Because in comparison, even with the church with COVID,
right.
That's why people are thinking about the church now. Right. I don't need a pastor.
Right.
I can think for myself. I can pastor myself, which may be wrong.
Right.
But that's where the world's shifting.
Right.
And so if the world's shifting like that, then in politics, we need to really think, maybe we need to think independently and not just be programmed Democrat or Republican.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, John, and thank you, Olgen, and thank you, Bishop. This has been Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison. on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Thank you so much for joining me. Every week I bring real talk about the real issues that affect us locally and also nationally. Be sure to subscribe to Real Talk on Twitter and Facebook. And I pray that you have a blessed and awesome day. Thank you again for listening to this broadcast. May the peace and grace of Almighty God be with you. Amen.
Amen.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.